The Fletcher Seventh-day Adventist Church is a Christian people who believe Jesus is the Son of God, the hope of the world, who died on the cross to redeem us all for eternal life with God. Our purpose is to lift Jesus up and love people in. Visit our website at www.fletchersda.org. And now be blessed by the Holy Spirit as you listen to a Bible message by Pastor Ivan Blake.
John chapter 8, verse 12 and 28 through 30. Jesus spoke to the people once more, and he said, "I am the light of the world. If you follow me, you won't have to walk in darkness, because you will have the light that leads to life." So Jesus said, "When you have lifted up the Son of Man on the cross, then you will understand that I am he. I do nothing on my own, but say only what the Father taught me, and the one who sent me is with me. He has not deserted me, for I always do what pleases him." Then many who heard him say these things believed in him.
Dear God, we don't know how to love you. We sang it, but we love ourselves. Forgive us. So that's why we came today, that you will create in us a love for you. And that will just change our lives. Won't take away the problems, but will make you supreme in the problems. Come and do that, Lord. Through your Spirit, let the power of the Spirit be released in every heart in this place. Amen. My favorite wife, Elvira, got a gift the other year, in fact. It was an olive tree. Small, it grows in a pot, and it's on the deck, sheltered by two walls. And here's about that tree that bugs me. It leans over like it's bending down and bowing to something. So I manually decided, I turn it around so that it will lean towards the wall and it will just grow up straight, vertically, leaning, turned it. Would you know that hours later, my favorite wife goes and turns it back to the way it used to be? Now, I know it's her plant, but this thing is leaning like it's bowing to something. It's just horrible. I learned 2 lessons. Can you guess what they are? Don't mess with your wife's plant. And that plant, probably like most plants, have a tendency to automatically lean towards what? Sunlight. Automatically. Now, why am I not like that? Why is it that I automatically, naturally tend to lean towards darkness, disbelief, discouragement, despair, depression, doubt, dread? You got another few D's to load onto me? That's just the D's. Am I the only one? Now, I've tried to manually turn myself so that I would lean towards the light. Manually, I've tried that. But that makes me like the guy that's stumbling around in a dark room looking for the light switch, but he's always bumping against obstacles, and finally what I end up with is a bloody emotions and relationships. Still in the dark. So what can I do to lean towards the light away from the darkness? Jesus knows I cannot do it. So he doesn't give me advice. What does he do? So during the Feast of Tabernacles, a setting of that passage that you just heard read, there was this huge, I'm not going to say it, candelabra, there it is, candelabra on high pillars, and the priest would climb up a ladder and go and light up these bowls of oil with the wick in it. And there were so many of them that it is said that the light shone, not just in the temple court where the candelabra was positioned, it actually lit the entire city of Jerusalem. Now that's a lot of light. Stunning view of this brilliance of light just washes over the whole city of Jerusalem, and the people do the torch dance. You say dance, but you can't do that. The torch dance in the light, remembering way back their ancestors in the desert lived under the fiery cloud, the light that lit up their camp at night. It was like they were living in the presence of God. It was like they were following God, leading them to the promised land of Canaan. And yet, the Israelites leant toward darkness. Now, Jesus is standing there. He sees all this. He knows what's going in their minds. What's in Jesus' mind? As he looks and he sees this bright light, and he knows, and people are remembering what happened in the time of Moses when that fiery light was shining. Jesus has something else burning inside of him, because he knows that that fiery cloud in the desert with Moses' time represented the Messiah to come. The light that is shining there over Jerusalem represented the Messiah who would come. So here is Jesus. What is going on inside of his heart and his mind? He is excited. This burning desire inside of him to be able to tell the people, I'm here. The light has come. But Jesus knows something else. That as bright as that light is that the people are dancing in, is but a candlelight compared to him, the light of the world. So he would want to take them into a bigger vision of light. So just imagine then, the next morning, the sun comes up from the east over the Mount of Olives, just shining over the mountain, just like this Jesus, this picture of Jesus, is shining onto us from the east. Did you know that? So Jesus then sees the sun coming up, and the rays of the sun brilliantly light up the marble walls of the palaces in Jerusalem, a beautiful sight of splendor. And the sunlight washes over the temple. The golden walls of the temple are just gorgeously brilliant as that sunlight comes up. And at that moment, can you imagine Jesus saying, I am the light of the world? He gets that from Malachi. You want to turn there? Go to Malachi 4. Jesus. Malachi 4 and 2, verse 2. It says, for you who fear my name, the Son of Righteousness will rise with healing in his wings. That's why he's the light of the world. The healing in his wings, the rays of the sun here are portrayed as wings spread out. And the Son of Righteousness, with the healing righteousness of salvation, is like the sunlight coming over the world and just washing over the world to bring the light of salvation to the people. That is Jesus. Not just Jerusalem, the world. The world. I am the light of what? The world. Imagine Jesus saying that. That's what's in his mind when he says that. In other words, you hear in this Jesus saying one more of these bold statements of the I am. He said, I am the water of life, I am this, I am this. I am. Here he is again. I am. There he is doing again what God, that he in fact did to Moses. When he revealed himself to Moses as the great I am, the eternal God who has no beginning, no end, is always present, he's timeless. He is the great I am, like no rival can equal him. This is one more of those statements. Jesus is the I am. That means Jesus is saying, I am God. It also means that Jesus is not just one of the lights shining around the place. He is the only light. It is Jesus or darkness. There's no other light when he says, I am the light of the world. It means this world, I'm the light of the world, this world is made for the light of Jesus to shine. Because when the light Jesus shines on this world, it exposes sin, it expels sin. Darkness flees. You can't have darkness and light in the same place at the same time. This world was made for the light of Jesus is home in this world. It's made for him. And the way the language is stated here, it means this. When Jesus says, I am the light of the world, the word I and the word light is identical. You can't think of Jesus without thinking of light. You cannot think of true light without thinking of Jesus. You've got Jesus, you've got light. Darkness is gone. Darkness is gone. Like Psalm 27:1, the Lord is my light and my salvation. That's the Son of Righteousness washing over the earth. You see, that's the meaning that Jesus has when he says, I am the light of the world. That's what he means. But what about implications? Just imagine for a moment you're there and you're one of the Jewish people doing the what dance? This beautiful dance that fits in with a light. It's the torch light, the torch dance that they called it. And you're one of those. What would a sincere but a humble, devout, Torah reading, Christ expecting Jew get out of the words when he hears or she hears Jesus say, I am the light of the world? What would they get out of it? What would they take home to tell their friends after hearing Jesus say that? At the same time, what would a humble, devout, and Bible-reading Seventh-day Adventist take away from reading the words in Scripture for Jesus to say, I am the light of the world? What would we take away from that? What would drive home? Jesus couldn't say anything more important. He, in fact, came all the way from heaven to say that. What do we get from it? What do we take home? I'm going to give you just a few examples of what strikes me. And the first one is simply this. When darkness crowds on me, because Jesus is the light of the world, meaning he is my light, when darkness crowds on me, I will boldly say, choose to say, Jesus, my light, please shine your full strength on my mind, my soul, on my despair, on my pain, on my struggle. Shine, Jesus, shine. I will learn to say that because Jesus came and said, I am the light of the world. If that implication doesn't come through into my heart, then I may as well not have heard Jesus say that. But since he did say that, it must have an impact on my life. And it's got to mean that when darkness comes into my life, whatever form it is, I'm going to call upon Jesus, the light of the world, to shine on that darkness. Do you do that? I pray to God that I will do it more and more. Really. Shine, Jesus, shine. Another implication for me, and that is that when this so-called thing of new light is brought to me by some well-meaning saint, new light, I will reject it as a distraction from Jesus, the true light. Careful of new light. Jesus is the I am. That means he's the old light, he's the new light. There's no other light than him. I'm not going to be distracted by so-called new light somebody shines on my life. Not going to do that. I have another very important implication. Jesus saying, I'm the light of the world. What's it mean to me? What do I take away from that? Instead of me yelling at the darkness around me, because Jesus is the light of the world and he is my light, I'm not going to yell at the dark. I'm not going to be negative towards those who think differently than I do. I'm not going to use names and say horrible things about those who act weird and are different to what I am. No, instead, I'm going to introduce the light of the gospel into the darkness. What a different world this would be if Christians would do that. What a different community this would be if we did that. Never a negative word about someone we disagree with, but a loving word because Jesus is the light. That's the implication, friend. Or else, why did he say it? I take those things seriously for myself. Where does it land with you? What difference is it going to make in your heart and mind that Jesus came and said, I am the light of the world? Put your name in the place of the world. What would you take from that? You need some sunlight? S-O-N light? You need some of that? You know, the good news is that whenever you read the Gospels and you study the life of Christ, you are actually soaking up sunlight. Don't neglect that. Whenever you take the time to study the scriptures to find out more about Jesus, and you'll find him in Leviticus as well as Luke, you're soaking up sunlight. You're turning your leaves towards the sun, the light. And whenever you pray like your life depends on it, and whenever you come to church to see and look at Jesus Christ, whenever you stand out to obey the will of God, you are soaking in sunlight. We need to do a lot more soaking, don't you think? Leaning towards sunlight. In this church, there are numerous groups that meet during the week, sometimes at home, sometimes here, several times here. Study groups, people who come together to pray, small groups, little larger groups, they do that frequently here, soaking up sunlight. I'm starting a new one. I would like to see 100 small groups of prayer and study before disasters occur that force us to do it. After 9/11, my church was full for 2 weeks. How about before the next disaster happens? We gather for prayer. I'm starting one, I'm calling it Calling on the Name of the Lord. That's the name of the group. Calling on the Name of the Lord. Where are you going right now? I'm going to call on the name of the Lord at 5:45 on Wednesdays, beginning this Wednesday, downstairs, room 117. Call on the name of the Lord. 5:45 is a weird time. I've decided to skip the meal for that Wednesday night. Doesn't look like I can afford it. but I'm going to do it anyway because I'm serious, really serious about the need for sunlight, S-O-N light, in my life, in my home, in my church, in my community, in my school. I'm serious about that. One more group. Sunlight. There's something about light that strikes me more than anything else. It's like that plant again. And that is that the power of light is known for its ability to draw things to itself, to attract things to itself. It's a powerful force that I cannot make myself lean to it, but I can allow the light to draw me to itself, and that makes me lean towards the light. The drawing power of the light, it attracts. And if you don't resist the light, talking figuratively now, it will draw you if you don't resist it. That's why in John 8, verse 30, the last verse in this passage today, we read these powerful words, the good news words, where it says that as Jesus was saying these things, many believed in him. Now, there's a lot of hostility going on. The Pharisees were attacking Jesus, but through it all, there were these many people that saw the light, did not resist it, and it drew them to him, to Jesus, and they ended up believing in Jesus. That's a rare thing you read in the stories of Jesus. Usually you read how that people turn away from him, how they get mad at him, how they disbelieve in Jesus. We can't go that far. Jesus has crossed the line. Here Jesus crosses the line, and he's got many people who end up believing in him. The light has drawn them. The light attracted them. And earlier on in verse 24, Jesus said to these same people, unless you believe that I am, all that means, you will die in your sins. So here you have people that because they step out believing in the I am, they will not die in their sins. In the resurrection, they will rise up and live forever in the presence of divine light, in a literal sense. What joy that must have brought Jesus. And he probably that night had a good talk to his father and said, Father, I saw the good things happen here. I came all the way from heaven. I laid aside my divine privileges in order to tell these people that I am the light of the world. And Father, you saw it. These people believe. How exciting it is. Can you imagine the joy in Jesus' heart? It is while they heard Jesus speaking about himself that they believed in him. I hope that at least in a small little way, as I talk to you about Jesus today, that you will be led to believing in him. I don't know if you're an unbeliever. I don't know if you're a somewhat believer. But I know that if you allow the light to draw you, even during these minutes of being together here, you would be drawn to him and you'll be a believer at the end of the service. And the same joy you will bring to Jesus and his Father. And I would just believe that Jesus would bump his Father and say, Father, do you see? Just like those people back then when I first said, I am the light of the world, and they believed, you know the joy? Same joy, God. I saw it happen in that church today. They allowed me to draw them. They're believers. You can be that believer today. Let him draw you. The light of Jesus. Why did many of the people believe in Jesus, but the Pharisees did not? You read those passages carefully there, and you notice that the Pharisees were more interested in law than they were interested in light. And it's still that way today. Experts in the law, but not drawn by the light. That's sad. They are so right, they are without light. Wow. God forbid. Now, I want you to see how Jesus drew those people. It's in the text there. Go to verse 28. See, the text says that the people didn't understand what Jesus was talking about. And then he makes it plain, and he goes to verse 28, and Jesus says, when you have lifted up the Son of Man, then you will know that I am. Get that again. Key words. Jesus says, when you have lifted up the Son of Man, then you will know that I am. What event do you think Jesus is referring to when he says, when you have lifted up the Son of Man? It's his crucifixion. He is saying to these people, do you want to have proof that I am the light of the world? Do you want to have irrefutable proof that I am the light from heaven? Then crucify me. Kill me. And when I die, a wave of light will beam from that cross that will flood the world and bring true light to every man and woman. Yeah. Crucify me. Jesus is saying, in order for you to be drawn to me, yes, I know you are drawn to me when I'm teaching you the truth. I know you're drawn to me when I feed you miraculously and I raise the dead and I make the blind to see. I know you are drawn to me for that. But there's nothing that will draw you to me so much as the light, as when you come and you see me lifted up. You are not really my follower until you come and see me lifted up as the light of the world. It is not enough that you follow me as your example. You only really follow me when you look and see me lifted up on the cross as the light of the world. Do you see it? I'm not making it up. Jesus is saying, him on the cross, that's the light of the world. Jesus is saying that. Do you see that? Come to Jesus and look at him lifted up. Don't resist that, friend, right now. I don't know what's going on in your heart, but if you resist those statements from Jesus, the light can't draw you. Oh, let it draw you to the cross. Let it draw you. You have to see me and receive me as crucified, Jesus says. That's what it means to be drawn to the light and to follow Jesus. That's what it means. So I ask you, have you actually seen him lifted up in your mind and in your heart? Have you really seen him dying in the dark for you? Utterly abandoned. Now, if you've experienced abandonment, you know the pain. You can, in a little way, understand what Jesus went through, abandoned. Here was Jesus. He had a perfect relationship with his Father, and he was left on the cross in the dark for you. That's why he says, when I'm lifted up, I'm the light that draws you to me. And until you've seen me lifted up, you haven't really seen who I am. You know what's so interesting in this passage to me is that while the people are listening to Jesus talk about him being lifted up on the cross, that is when they see the light. That is when they are drawn to him. That is when they believe. It's when Jesus talks about the cross. It makes the Pharisees mad. It makes the sinners glad. The cross. There once was a man who was born and raised in prison, together with a lot of other people who were born and raised in prison, more like a dungeon, a very dark place. And these people would get together and debate, and the topic of debate usually was, is this all there is? Or is there another world out there somewhere that we don't know about? They would debate this. And there was a young man who would say, yeah, somehow I believe there must be something better than this. There must be another world out there that we just cannot imagine how good it is. And the others would counter him and say, the evil warden, even though he's evil, he says there's nothing but this. And we've got to believe him because we haven't seen, we can't even feel like there could possibly be anything else than this. Has anyone else brought any contrary proof? And the young man would just think about that. And then one day, another prisoner arrived. And the evil warden told them that this prisoner is not transferred from another place. This man was transferred from another place, that's all. But the man who came in as a prisoner said to them, I am from the outside. Don't believe the evil warden. He says, I was just transferred from another place in the prison. But I'm from the outside. Let me tell you about the outside. He said, outside, there is light. There are trees. And all the prisoners said to him, what is a tree? Oh, he says, I'll sketch it for you. He scratches it on the prison wall, some crude drawing that resembles a tree. And he draws the sun. And he draws some flowers. He draws some smiling faces. And he says, there are those things on the outside. Please believe me. And then he tells them, there's a prince on the outside. And that prince has told me to come in here and tell you that he really cares about you. And one day he's going to come and he's going to break into this prison dungeon and he's going to set you free. And then that prisoner was taken away. And they sat and they thought about that. Oh, how could he do that? How could he say that? Most people said, he's dreaming. He was a dreamer, some false prophet maybe. But this young man thought, often sat in his cell thinking to himself, is it true? Is it real? Is this something I need to cultivate in my mind? And while he was sitting there and thinking about that, he heard this strange sound. It was a loud knocking sound against the wall of his cell from the outside. It grew louder. And just in a few minutes, a hole was punched through the wall. And with that hole, the size of a man's fist, came in light from outside. Light. Never seen that before. He decided to go to the hole. And as he looked through the hole and he saw outside, you know what he saw? He saw a tree. What is that? He looked at the sketch, the crude sketch scratched on the cell wall, and he saw a resemblance. And he looked out and he saw a sun. He saw people. He saw flowers. He saw colors that he had never seen before. All he saw was dark gray and dark brown. There he saw yellow and blue and green and red. And then he heard the prince. And the prince spoke to him and said, you see how real I am? Now you know I'm real. Now you know the world outside the prison is real. Now you have light shining into your dark prison cell. I'm coming sometime to break open that prison, that dungeon. I'm going to set everyone free. But in the meantime, look often at the light. Let the light shining through the hole in the wall which I have made, let that light change you. Let that light give you hope. Let that light be what you live in. And I'll be back. Oh, it changed the man's life entirely. All he was interested in was looking through the hole, through the light. It changed the way he treated his fellow prisoners. He now treated them with dignity because he had the light shining into his prison. His prison wasn't just all there is now. His prison was part of a much bigger world because the light from that world was shining in. May I ask you, does it sometimes seem like to you this is all there is? This life? Have you been discouraged because this life is just crowding in too much? The darkness is just too much to bear. And you've heard those stories told about a better world, but that better world isn't coming. And you wonder, is it real? And then Jesus comes one day and he says to you, those old stories that you heard and read about, those old stories are true. They're in the Bible. Those stories are what I want you to really believe in. But much more than that, I have broken through the wall of your prison and I have brought light into your life. All I want you to do in the meantime, before I come and break down the whole prison, I want you to live in the light that I'm shining through your wall, the hole that I have made. Jesus saying that. I have light for you to live in. Imagine living in that light, dwelling on that light, looking at it, allowing it to flood your heart and mind every day. Just imagine the purity, the chastity, the honesty, the kindness, the grace, the mercy, the peace that your life will be known for. Living in that light. Imagine that. Just imagine having that light fill your life to some extent, such an extent that any darkness that comes your way, your response will be, shine. Jesus, shine. I want you to sing that song. You're going to see it on the screen. You're going to listen to the people, a crowd of people like you and me in London singing it in the great Albert Hall. They're singing, shine, Jesus, shine. Let's join them. As our prayer, as our response, as the way, our theme, our mantra, we will take with us from here when darkness comes into our lives. Shine. Jesus, shine. Don't mumble it. Sing it. Don't be embarrassed by singing it out, because this is the light of the world. Your world, my world. Let's sing it. Lord Jesus, when you came and you said to this world, I am the light of the world. I don't know what will happen, Lord, if you come right now and you say the same words. Maybe you want to say them in our hearts this moment. It's not to just cry them out in a place that is gloriously lit and there's lots of symbolism, but it's in our hearts. And I thank you, Lord, that you right now, you search out dark hearts, my heart, needy hearts, yearning hearts. And because you do shine your light into our hearts, we refuse to resist. Our response is just simple, Lord. Shine. What else? Shine, say it. Jesus, shine. Amen.
We trust your relationship with God has been strengthened from what you have heard today. Please visit our website at www.fletchersda.org. May God give you his peace and joy.